We're going to be talking about silencing fear today. I wanted to go in a direction that could be really useful to you, so we are going to do a very experiential talk today. But a little bit about me. My name is Megan Bayless Bartley, and I was born in Santa Cruz, California. Anybody know Santa Cruz? And I was raised in Seattle, Washington, so I'm a little bit of a West Coast girl at heart. I made it to Louisville first by way of Tucson, Arizona, to come to the Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary to get my Master's of Arts in Marriage and Family Therapy to become a therapist. So I am here with my husband and my two kids. I have a 7-year-old daughter and an almost 10-year-old son who are here joining me today. So it's fun for them to get to see Mom do her thing. So my work, people call me all sorts of things. They call me a therapist, a healer, author, educator, and I've even been called Yoda, which I have to say is probably the best compliment I've ever received. But what I realized as I was preparing for this and really distilling, because I only have 20 minutes, is that my work involves silencing fear for people. And I do that by offering new tools for your toolbox to deal with all of life's stressors. And about 2.5 years ago, I founded Louisville Mindfulness Center, and I needed my private practice. We lived in Austin, Texas for 11 years after I graduated from seminary and moved back here about 5 years ago. So after I'd been in my solo practice for 3 years, I was bursting at the seams and I needed some more like-minded therapists to refer to. So I thought, well, I'll just start interviewing people and put my own thing together. So I founded Louisville Mindfulness Center for more accessibility. And I also named it that because I didn't want it to be Louisville Therapy Center or the Louisville Counseling Center, because we do more than that. And really what we're doing is teaching people how to live more mindfully, to awaken yourself from the autopilot of the hamster wheel that we kind of feel sometimes like we're running every day, and become more mindful. So we have some like-minded therapists. We are solution-focused and non-pathologizing. So we are not looking for all the things that are wrong with you, because you're really good at doing that yourself, right? We are looking for all the wonderful things about you and all the ways you've been successful in the past so you can remember that for yourself, because you have been, whether you know it or not. Okay, so will you join me in a bit of an exercise? Yes? Okay, so I know we've just had all of our adrenaline going with our 30-second pitches. But what I would like you to do, we're going to do a little bit of a guided meditation. And so if you would, uncross your legs and put both feet on the floor. Or just stand in a comfortable standing position with your legs uncrossed. And notice your feet on the floor, your feet in your shoes, wiggle your toes, and really get a grounded feeling there. And keep that with you throughout this guided meditation. And if it feels comfortable to you, you may choose to close your eyes or to gaze gently down at the floor, but allowing not a lot of visual stimulation. You may want to silence your cell phones, thank you. Although we're going to use any distractions to our benefit and allow any distractions that come up for us to help us go deeper into this relaxation. And so you probably have all done this before on your own, or you've listened to something online, and just invite your body to begin to relax, perhaps even a feeling of melting, and see how the mind follows. Now we're talking about fears today. So you may have a fear or concern or worry that's really weighing on your heart. And that you feel that if this thing were different, so many things in my life could be different. And it may be uncomfortable to think about this thing, and that's okay. Just make space for that discomfort. And any resistance that you're feeling, allow that resistance to help you go deeper into this state of relaxation and melting. And so, as you're thinking of this fear or worry or concern, you may notice it somewhere in your body. A tension in your body, a tightening in your chest, a lump in your throat, a knot in your stomach. Wherever it is, just notice when you think of this fear or worry, where it shows up for you in your body. And if you will, just take a few breaths into that space in your body, imagining as if it were a balloon that you could breathe in and inflate the balloon and breathe out and deflate it, providing some exercise of this space there. And if you feel comfortable with this, you may decide to put your hand on the space where you feel this tension. No worries if you don't. There's no right or wrong or good or bad here. So imagine now that you have the opportunity to talk to this tension in your body or this fear or concern or worry, and you're going to ask it some questions. You're going to have a conversation with it. You may ask, what do I need to be able to let this go? What do I need differently? What space do I need to create? Or what questions do I even need to ask you? Just take a moment to be there with this fear, tension, the discomfort, and see if you can listen. Create a space for listening to your body, to your fear. It's there. This discomfort in your body is there because it's trying to get your attention. So this is us giving it a touch of attention in an effort to diffuse it and let it go. Now you may also imagine that you could have a conversation with your 80-year-old self. What would your 80-year-old self like to tell you about this fear or discomfort or tension in your body? What questions might you ask your 80-year-old self about how to best deal with this fear or tension or anxiety? Again, this is a conversation that you can have at any time, that you can remember. At any time, you can bring yourself back to this space. And see if there's any other questions that you'd like to ask your fear or tension or 80-year-old self, wherever you're at in this moment, in this space of relaxation, perhaps of some clarity. And perhaps you even might not be getting any answers. You can't hear anything today, and that's okay too. You may get some messages over a matter of time. This is a chance for you just to create the space to hear those answers. So begin to wrap up your conversation with yourself and take a few deep breaths to start to gently awaken your body, bringing yourself back to this space. Perhaps you wiggle your fingers and toes, awakening your body, move and shift a little bit in your chair, whatever feels best to you. And when you're ready, just slowly open your eyes. About 11 years ago, I was in a yoga class, and the instructor was reading from a book, as they do often, some wise words, and I heard her say, "Fearlessness resides in the softness of the heart." And I had no idea what that meant, but I was really intrigued with fearlessness, and I had no idea what softening in the heart meant. And I was intrigued, so afterwards I went up to her and I said, "What? Who wrote that? What book are you reading from? This fearlessness resides in the softness of the heart." And she looked at me, confused, and she said, "That's not what I read." She said, "But perhaps that's what you needed to hear." And I, of course, got goosebumps because I was like, yes, I needed to hear that. Because this is baby Megan, 11 years ago, not too baby. But I had just started my first private practice in Austin, Texas, and I was excited for it to be successful, and I was a complete perfectionist at the time. I was 31. My whole life had been about being perfect and doing it right and living in black and white, and it was this or that, and I wanted to choose the right thing. And at the time, my husband and I had been married for 4 years, and we were thinking about starting a family, and I thought, well, shit, I am such an anxious person that if I am this anxious when I have kids, they're going to be a wreck, and I'm going to be a wreck. So I really need to do something with my anxiety, which, of course, as a therapist, I've had a lot of therapy of my own, too, but still needed to work on that. So I did what anybody would do in this situation. I took up improv comedy. I did. Now, if you had known me and my husband at the time, this wouldn't have been totally out of the ordinary. My husband is an accomplished improv comedian, and all of our friends were improv comedians or the partners or spouses of improv comedians, so this was totally within our wheelhouse. But I am not a performer. It is terrifying for me to be up on stage in front of people. But I knew that I needed something to get me totally out of my comfort zone, to stretch me and to help me grow. And this is the way I did it. I also, if you don't know much about improv comedy, it has a yes and philosophy, which is not yes but. So it's not negating whatever comes before it, but it's yes and. So for example, when you're up on stage in improv comedy, you ask for a suggestion and, say, what's a relationship between two people? And they say, father and son. And you say, yes. And then you do this whole scene based on that, and you add to it. So you take what is being presented and you add a little bit of yourself to it, right? So that it creates a win-win situation, not win-lose, which is really fun. So, like I said, I saw things really in black and white, and I was needing to expand my thinking, and I was desperately needing to see more rainbow of options. And so, in the fall of 2008, I enrolled in my first Improv 101 class, and I left every single class, totally a mess, crying all the way home. I mean, it was so uncomfortable for me. And I may or may not have failed that first 101 class, partly because I didn't attend all the classes, and so they couldn't pass me. So I decided to take 101 again. I was going to stick with it because I realized that growth doesn't happen without discomfort. So I was totally putting myself outside my comfort zone. So how this works, and Austin's known for its comedy community, and I chose the teacher that I wanted, who I thought was going to be best for me and be gentle and all that. But I decided to do 101 over, and I fell into a wonderful group of friends who were really supportive, and so we continued on, and we took 201 together, and we took 301 together, and at the end of our 301 class, there's a performance. Our first public performance, which is not why I did this, but it was to grow. So I remember that night so vividly, and I wasn't anxious at all because I had been preparing for this moment for 9 months. 9 months of practicing improv. 9 months of doing it with these people that I trusted and that loved me and supported me, and I felt the same towards them. And we were using our yes and, which is super supportive. We were taking our failure bows, which if you don't know much about that, improv comedy celebrates failures, which as a perfectionist was like the most liberating thing ever, because you celebrate, because it's funnier when you fail, right, in comedy? We spoke gibberish, which is totally outside my comfort zone, but we did it. And here's my graduating class. Here's me. So overall, silencing fear means making friends with discomfort, because growth doesn't happen without discomfort. And when you learn new things, you build new neural pathways. So I love this idea of that if we give something a lot of attention, if I'm lifting weights with this arm is going to grow so big and bulky, right? So if I'm sitting here overthinking and worrying and spending all my time and energy just worried about things that I don't want to happen, they're going to happen anyway because all my neural pathways are being strengthened in that direction. And when I choose to put the weight in a different hand, and I start to lift weights with this other hand, focusing on the things that I do want, focusing on happiness and joy and gratitude, right? You've all heard of gratitude journals. This is why you do that. You're building a muscle, right? So what happens is this thing that you don't want starts to atrophy and die off. And all the wonderful things you do want build and grow and get stronger. So let's review what we did in our little guided meditation here, which I don't know if you can see this. This is mindfulness sort of at the simplest form and very practical, okay? When you notice something uncomfortable, a fear, a sadness, whatever you're feeling, notice it. Take just a brief moment to give it a touch of attention instead of ignoring it. When we resist, it persists, right? It builds and it grows and it gets bigger and scarier. However, when we give it a touch of attention, it diffuses it, right? And then we can allow time and space if we want to cry if we need to, or if we're at work and we don't have the time, we can say, after work, I'm going to give myself some space to do this, right? And then you let it go. You imagine, because for many of us, letting go is very hard, but just imagine that, it's a bird and it flies away, or clouds and sky floating by, leaves in the stream. And then you refocus your attention on what you do want. That's how you build those new neural pathways. Because what you feed grows. There's a Cherokee story about a grandfather who's talking with his grandson. And the grandfather is saying, there are two wolves that live inside of me. And one is evil and mean and scary and full of ego and pride and guilt and shame. And the other wolf is wonderful, full of love and kindness and gentleness, gratitude. And grandson, you have these two wolves inside of you too. And everybody has these two wolves inside of them. And the grandson thinks for a bit, and he says, which wolf wins? And the grandfather says, the one that you feed. Thank you, guys.